Welcome to the Queen's Court, where growth has a cost, where healing changes everything, and where the woman you're becoming requires you to let go of who you used to be. This season, we're talking about elevation, choosing yourself, outgrowing what no longer fits, and moving like you've already decided. Because you're not her anymore. This is the Queen's Court.
So welcome back to the Queen's Court, a space curated for women by women where faith, sisterhood, and real conversations meet. I am your host, Neicey Ford. And before we get into today's conversation, I owe y'all an apology because I know that I've been away for a minute. Life has been lifing over here. Work has been busy. I'm back in school working on my master's. And I just had a lot going on and a lot that I've been trying to balance. And I never intended to stay away for this long, but sometimes you do have to recognize when you have a lot on your plate and give yourself permission to focus on the things that need your attention at that moment. So thank you to everybody who has continued to listen. Check in, share the episodes, wait patiently for me to get back behind the mic. I'm back, and actually being away for that little while makes this episode a little more fitting. So this season, we've been talking about E3, which is elevation, expansion, and evolution. So when thinking about everything that I've been juggling over the past year and just even the past couple of months, I realized that evolution doesn't always mean that you have to completely start over. It may simply mean that you just need to look at what you've already built and then recognize that the original plan needs some revisions because life changes and we change too. And if you're not changing, then something might be wrong. But that's a different story for a different day. Things happen, that we never planned for. And sometimes what we thought we wanted isn't what we want anymore. So today I want to talk about revising the blueprint. When I think about a blueprint, I always hear Jay-Z's song, Blueprint Mama Loves Me, playing in my ear. And in the song, Jay-Z was literally paying homage to people who were instrumental in shaping his life. So he starts by saying, Mama loved me, Pop left me, Mickey fed me, Annie dressed me, East Trenton grew me. Now, this is not the same, verse, but another one. He says, East Trenton grew me, had me skipping school. Valencia's boyfriend, Volvo, had me making moves. And then when he gets down to the end of everything that he's, and everybody that he's paying homage to, he says, years going past fast, let's move along. He's talking about, his mother, his father, his neighborhood, the people who took care of him, and the people who introduced him to different things and different experiences that helped shape him into the person that he was. So it made me think about our own blueprints. And when you think about your life, what are some of the things and who are some of the people who helped shape you and were instrumental in laying the foundation for your life? When I thought about mine personally, I immediately thought about my mother. And she was definitely that person who laid the foundation by showing me right from wrong as a young lady, what was and wasn't acceptable. And then we had my brother who was instrumental in me being a little jazzy, a little feisty, because we used to fight all the time and I had to learn how to hold my own. I had a boyfriend who taught me business and how to be an entrepreneur, how to go for what I wanted. Other people were very instrumental in shaping who I was. For instance, my sister. I remember when I was younger, and I don't even know how old I was, but I was much younger than, my sister was. There's a huge age gap in between us, but for whatever reason, this memory is etched into my mental. So I remember she and one of her girlfriends came home from school one day, and she would always come home and she would have a bag of snacks. In this bag, she would have some grape now laters, a bag of sour cream Lays, and a Snicker. To this day, I kid you not, like I still love me some Snickers. I do not like the sour cream Lays, but I love some plain Lays, and I will risk my whole life going to the corner store for some now laters. Now, I'll spend about $5 and get a whole bunch of them. They'll last me for a little minute, but absolutely love them. And it's just funny how some of the smallest things become a part of who we are without us even realizing it. Growing up, had my whole life planned out. I was going to graduate high school, go to college, become a nurse, then an author, publish some books, live happily ever after with my husband, my kids. That was my blueprint. But sometimes we do have to modify the design and change the schematics because life doesn't always work out according to our plan. And I always hear older people saying, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. And I know that he has probably laughed at me on multiple occasions because they never work out according to what I've planned. And that's okay. I'm still here, so he's still working on me, and that's a good thing. But when I thought about my own personal blueprint and the things that I just mentioned, none of that happened the way that I planned it to. I did finish high school, but I graduated with a 6-month-old baby, and I didn't go to college until many years later because, again, the plan was I was going to graduate high school. I had my baby. My mother was going to watch my daughter until I got acclimated. And at this particular college, you could go and you could complete a couple of semesters. And if you had a child, then you could apply for single parent housing. And that was the plan. But as you guys know, I have mentioned this in several other episodes where my mom, she passed on the day that I graduated from high school. So that didn't happen according to the way I planned it. I didn't become a nurse, but I did publish, I became a published author. I was married and divorced, but I did live happily ever after with my kids. So some of it happened differently. Some of it didn't even happen at all. And some of the things that eventually became part of my life weren't even part of the original blueprint. So when my mother passed, that was probably the first moment that I realized, oh shit, like this is not what I had planned. Loss definitely wasn't written in the original blueprint that I had created for my life. But that's the thing about life. Like I said, we can make plans, but there are going to be things that happen that we couldn't have anticipated when we were drawing everything out. Something else that ended up on my blueprint was my love for business, which is why nursing eventually got pushed to the back burner. And now don't get me wrong, because I absolutely loved helping people and I excelled in the clinical setting. But I would say that my desire for nursing at the time intensified because my mother was sick. But as life went on and I learned more about myself, I realized that business is truly where I thrive. And that doesn't mean that nursing was a bad dream or that there was something wrong with wanting it at the time. It just didn't fit the same way anymore. So, what happens when life doesn't follow the blueprint? Do we scrap the whole blueprint? I mean, you couldn't because you've already lived some of it out, but you can revise it. And whether that's erasing people, revising dreams that no longer align with your purpose, changing priorities, or getting rid of anything that doesn't fit the design of the life that you're building now, you have the ability to make those revisions. Being an author, the idea of of revisions makes perfect sense to me because revisions are like drafts of a book. There may be several versions before you finally get to the one that you're ready to submit. You might look at a sentence, you reread it a couple times and like, it just don't flow right. Or you can look at a whole chapter and be like, dang, like I don't even know why I wrote this. And go back and scrap parts of the chapter and rewrite it, but you are not going to throw, and you don't throw the entire book away every time that you have to change something. You look at what works, you figure out what's not working, and then you make the revisions. But at the end of the day, you just keep writing. Why shouldn't we be able to do the same thing with our lives? Because who said that the original blueprint has to be permanent? I don't know about you, but I was probably between the ages of 16 and 18 when I created my first blueprints. And if you think about that, at 16 or 18, We haven't even experienced marriage, divorce, motherhood, loss, disappointments, discovering new gifts, everything else that life will eventually introduce us to. So, why would we expect a blueprint that's drawn up by an earlier, much younger version of ourselves to perfectly accommodate the life or the person that we've become or even wanting to become? Just a question to ponder, and then I just want to leave you with this thought. Whether you've outgrown parts of the blueprint or you've simply realized that the original design doesn't fit anymore, what you gonna do now? I think you have to decide three things, and that is, what do I keep? What do I revise? And what do I release? Because everything can't stay, but everything doesn't have to go either. Some things are still part of your foundation, and that's fine. Some of the dreams may still belong to you, and that's fine too. But the timeline or the way that you get there may need to be changed. So you got to look at those things. And then there may be some things that simply just don't fit who you are anymore at all. So the question becomes, what's benefiting you at the stage that you're in right now and what's not? Because again, your blueprint may be outdated and in need of some revisions. So I want you to take inventory, make the revisions, get rid of what's no longer working and needed, and then do what Jay-Z did and drop the blueprint 2 and 3, whatever version it is for you, and just be ready for what comes next. Because revising the blueprint again doesn't mean that everything you planned before was wrong. It just means that now you've lived enough life to recognize when the design needs to be changed. So I want to say thank you, because when you think about that, that's evolution. That's E3. And that's what we're doing. We're elevating, expanding, and evolving. And sometimes, you have to be willing to revise the blueprint along the way. So that's all I got. I was trying to think of what I could come back with after being gone for so long. And I hope this was good for you, because I really did put some thought into it and liked it, because I don't know, I was riding home from work and the blueprint came on. I was like, oh, I like to revise the blueprint. But I also love me some Jay-Z. But thank you guys for what they say, rolling with a sister. Thanks for sticking around. Thanks for hanging out with me in the rain room today. And just remember that you don't have to scrap the whole thing. Just make the necessary revisions and keep it moving. Keep writing. This is not the end of your story. So this, if you found this episode interesting and you want to share it with someone, please do so. You can share, you can subscribe, you can leave a review. I encourage you to do all of those things. And you can find The Queen's Court. It's available on Spotify. So you can follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube at The Queen's Court Pod. And then you can connect with our community on IG at The Queen's Court Pod, and then on TikTok at The Rain Room. And that's the TheReign Room. So again, thank you for being patient. Thank you for the grace that you've given and the understanding. And again, I hope you enjoyed the episode, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Thank you for spending time here in the Queen's Court. I hope today's conversation gave you something to think about, reflect on, and maybe even move on. Make sure you subscribe, share, and download so you never miss a moment. And until next time, keep choosing yourself, keep walking in purpose, and keep showing up for the life you say you want.